Hello wonderful people and welcome back. This video is titled Man Always Sick, Notices Tiny Latch on Wife's Christmas Gift. Let's get into this. People from all over the world love Christmas. Mr. Jones was one of the people who adored the festive season, that is until it almost claimed his life. Mr. Jones sought medical help after his health started to slowly decline. He wanted to understand what was the source of his problems. When the doctor informed him that he needed to get rid of his wife's Christmas gift, he was confused and stunned. Mr. Jones and his spouse were in good shape, despite their advanced age. The both enjoyed being active and ensured that they met their daily nutritional needs. Following their Christmas meal with their children and grandkids, Mr. Jones began to have symptoms that began as little and trivial and progressed to the point where he was immobile. The moment he started to experience shortness of breath, he instantly contacted his doctor. His doctor instructed him to avoid any suspected allergens, such as pets, smoking, and pollen, after many consults and testing. His wife removed everything from their home that could have been the culprit for his bodily reaction. Her husband's reaction, though, made her even more apprehensive. Mr. Jones's condition worsened as time went by. He needed help desperately, so Mrs. Jones turned to their children for assistance. Her son then suggested that she schedule an appointment with one of his dearest friends who was a fantastic pulmonologist. She decided to contact his offices and made an appointment with her son's friend. She could only hope that her husband's condition will improve. Dr. Henry prescribed Mr. Jones with medication that seemed to be working. They were so grateful for his help that they decided to make him a dinner. Before we continue, if you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. Now back to the video. He had no idea that this visit would be the solution to all of the couple's problems. Mr. Jones and Henry engaged in conversation while they were setting the table. There was no shortage in conversation topics and they had a great time. Mr. Jones' condition was discussed about 30 minutes into the meal. The three felt powerless as one topic flew around the dining table. One question remained unanswered. Nobody could determine the cause of Mr. Jones's condition. Hardly anything made sense as they tried to figure out where it all began, attempting to make some type of connection to make it all make some sense. The three began retracing Mr. Jones' steps, as if they were investigators. The only information that they were certain of was that he only began experiencing symptoms shortly after Christmas. With that in consideration, they examined everything from every viewpoint possible until they arrived at the topic of gifts. They began looking into each of Mr. and Mrs. Jones' gifts one by one until they came across one in particular. Henry evaluated each gift up until they got to the gift Mr. Jones received from his wife. A bright bulb went off in Henry's head when she explained the handcrafted gift she had prepared for her spouse. Mrs. Jones was immediately asked to steer him towards gift. Holding the artwork Mrs. Jones produced for her spouse for Christmas, he concentrated on the small clasp, opening it up to uncover residues of what appeared like a natural substance. He asked her frankly what the remnants were. Henry was so taken aback by her response that he blurted out 4 words to the worried couple. "Throw it away now," he said with urgency in his voice. Shocked by what she heard, Mrs. Jones asked for an explanation. Henry went on to explain that blue mussel, especially when ground, could cause heavy metal poisoning after being exposed to it for a long time. The two listened as Henry explained the endless effects of the exposure to ground blue mussel. The couple was quick to throw the gift away, learning about artists that have faced major health problems from mussel shells, for they act as the environment's filter feeders. They accumulate toxins that are found in their surroundings. As a result of feeling really worried, Mrs. Jones ended up taking extreme measures. Mrs. Jones took every step possible to raise awareness of the possible risk factors of the naturally found ingredients that people use in their day-to-day life. The more she learned, the more she shared. She wanted to make sure that no one would have to go through the health scare that they went through. Mrs. Jones found a lot of risks found within art materials. Mrs. Jones found a lot of risks found within art tools. Mrs. Jones realized that stone and wood carvers, glass workers, and many other art forms come with several health risks. Her story comes as a lesson to teach everyone to always do their research before using things that they don't know much about. But the story that struck a chord with Mrs. Jones the most was about a Canadian artist who was slowly poisoned by her own art. Gillian Genser, a sculptor artist from Canada, had been working on a specific sculpture of Adam from the Garden of Eden since 1998. Nature and the current Gillian Genser environmental crisis inspired her, and most of her artwork was represented in this way. But Jillian was oblivious to the fact that her own art was slowly poisoning her. Jillian liked to use bones, shells, and dried plants as a medium for her sculptures. For the sculpture of Adam, she specifically wanted to use blue mussel shells. She had created a sculpture of Lilith before she began Adam, and it had been made entirely from eggshells. She only used natural, organic materials. Little did she know, it would be her undoing. Jillian wanted to use blue mussel shells in her Adam sculpture because she noticed how they resembled human muscle fibers when they were polished. She intended the sculpture to be her life's work, her magnum opus. But, ironically, what had taken so many years of her life to complete would ultimately be the end of hers. Jillian's Adam sculpture was made from the blue mussel shells she'd buy from Toronto's Chinatown in bulk. She'd spend hours sculpting and grinding the mussel shells down into a fine powder, and then sanded them until they gleamed. It took her 15 years to finally finish the sculpture of Adam. However, she never anticipated that this piece would ultimately cause her death. A few years into her art project, Jillian started feeling ill. She had constant headaches and nausea, but anything she did to try and relieve her symptoms only seemed to make them worse. It all started with some minor aches and pains, but now it had escalated to sore bones and fatigue. At first, she dismissed her illness as stress. But it slowly got even worse. Jillian was looking for any way to feel better while she continued working on her sculpture, which was nearly finished. She tried every vitamin available, including vitamin B, vitamin C, zinc, iron, and vitamin E. After taking them for a few weeks, there was no notable improvement in the headaches, short-term memory loss, and crippling fatigue. She finally decided to go back to the doctor. Jillian got to the doctor's office and they were shocked by her condition. What they had dismissed as a cold a few weeks earlier had now gotten far worse. They were surprised that a woman with a healthy immune system like Jillian, who should have overcome the flu weeks ago, was still deteriorating. Now, they were growing concerned, too. After seeing Jillian again, the doctor started to take her condition a little more seriously. He ran blood and allergy tests to hopefully find any disease or intolerance. But the tests came back with the same result: Jillian was perfectly healthy. They didn't have a diagnosis, but they decided to try an elimination approach, so Jillian was put on several different antibiotics. Hopefully, they would then find out what was really going on. After Jillian was given the medication, they waited to see her reaction. This was their best hope of finding out why she wasn't getting better. Most importantly, they needed to stop her from getting worse. The medication the doctor gave her would hopefully give more insight into what was causing her illness, but instead, it had the opposite effect. Jillian started to feel worse instead of better. She had body aches and could barely keep her eyes open. Then the mystery illness started to take a toll on her mental health. Her friends and family members started to worry. Was the condition just a state of mind? Jillian couldn't believe that. She knew her body and she knew something was wrong. Jillian, determined to get to the bottom of her illness, searched for her symptoms online. She spoke to experts in online chats, and she tried herbal treatments and natural remedies, but nothing seemed to be helping. As time went by, more and more people lost faith in her, and no one could give her answers. She had never felt so alone before. Maybe it really was just all in her head. Jillian visited her doctor regularly over the next 2 years. Her doctor provided her with the best care and tested for everything that he could. She went to great lengths to attempt to diagnose Jillian. She also visited psychiatrists who put her on antipsychotics and antidepressants. But still, nothing helped. Jillian was convinced she was dying, but she needed to finish her sculpture of Adam. In 2015, when Jillian had almost finished her Adam sculpture, she finally made a breakthrough. After seeing doctor after doctor, she finally saw a specialist. The specialist performed a blood test and found extraordinary levels of lead and arsenic in her blood. When she learned the reason for the high levels, she was absolutely horrified. A professor who specialized in invertebrates at the Royal Museum of Ontario was shocked when Jillian told him that she had been working with blue mussel shells in her sculpture for almost 15 years. "He told me, people don't realize how poisonous these things are," she said. So, ironically, Jillian had literally given her life for her art. Mussels living in polluted waters accumulate lead and arsenic in their shells. Jillian had been touching and working with these toxic shells for more than a decade. Even worse, she was breathing in the dust of the ground-up shells as she worked. The toxins entered her body and slowly damaged her nervous system. Jillian eventually finished her sculpture of Adam, but her quality of life is now poor. Even though her art was poisoning her, she couldn't leave her life's work unfinished. When I look at Adam, I feel grief, both for myself and our planet. But I also feel satisfaction because he is magnificent. That's how I find my hope. I call him my beautiful death. That's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. As always, if you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.